As far as a mass public shooting, this was the very first one that Maine, and it's a particularly horrific one because Maine, as you mentioned there, doesn't see a lot of murder generally. I think
No.
it's somewhere between 20 and 25 people murdered a year in Maine, and this was 18 people in one incident. That's as far as the effect on the community, I'm sure that's just unbearable.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that we haven't seen before. It's something that is continuing to shock the community. As I said, Maine is a safe state in terms of just gun violence in general. We do have a slightly elevated rate of suicide compared to other New England states, but other directed gun violence is very, very low, and so we just have never experienced anything like this.
Yeah, and to get to I guess the main focus of our conversation today. Perhaps another layer of just unfortunate news here is that it does seem as though this shooter, the suspect in this incident, should not have been legally allowed to either obtain or retain the firearms used to kill these people. I mean, from what we know, and look, there's been a lot of uncertainty on some of these points with public officials saying different things at different times, and reputable news outlets reporting different things. But the latest report we have is the hospital, and a source inside the hospital told the Boston Globe that this is a New York hospital on a base in New York, that the suspect in this case was involuntarily committed for 2 weeks. That had been the initial report that came out in a police bulletin, but then was disputed by Maine's public safety commissioner, and also the FBI had said that they didn't have a record of disqualifying commitment in their database, in their background check database. So there's some uncertainty about this. It does line up with a lot of the reported details that this would have been involuntarily commitment, because the suspect was reportedly hearing voices that weren't there. We were accusing him of being a pedophile and so forth, and that he had threatened to shoot people on his base where he was an Army reservist. And then he was taken by police to this mental health institution. He stayed there for 2 weeks. That was the initial reporting. The latest reporting from the Boston Globe suggests that this was an involuntary commitment, which should have made him a prohibited person, right? Under federal law. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, under federal law, if you have been involuntarily committed to a mental treatment facility, then you are not able to purchase a firearm. In Maine, if you have been involuntarily committed, you are not able to possess firearms. Now, there's no automatic process that is triggered to basically allow law enforcement to collect those weapons. And so there's a little bit of a lack of clarity there about what steps should have been taken. But we do have the yellow flag law that seems like this would have been sort of a textbook case for that law to have been invoked. And it's unclear exactly why it wasn't in this case.
Yeah, let's talk. That's the other aspect of this as well. You have the federal prohibition for anyone who's been involuntarily committed, and they're not supposed to be able to even possess firearms for the rest of their lives under federal law. But and that would be anywhere in the country, of course. But you also have what's been discussed a lot with Maine, which is this. It was sort of a variation on the red flag law. People call it a yellow flag law. It's sort of colloquial terms for both of these. I mean, they're called emergency
extreme risk.
Yeah,
extreme risk protection order.
Yeah, protection orders. That's more technical term for these things. But Maine's is a little bit different than most other ones, so that people call it a yellow flag law. But even under this proposal, can you just walk us through how it works and whether the details that we understand from current reporting would have qualified him, or how they would have?
Yeah, so the way that our yellow flag law works, it is a compromise that is meant to offer more due process protections to individuals than is afforded with the red flag law. The red flag laws can be instigated by a family member, for example, and petitioned to the court, whereas in a yellow flag law situation, only law enforcement can petition the court. It's a little bit just semantics.
Do you think that makes a big difference? Because if the family members tell the police, they tell the police,
and so you're kind of skipping over law enforcement in this in a sense with the red flag laws, there is an additional step where the law enforcement agency has to take the individual into protective custody. So that's kind of a big step, and then they have to basically present the court with findings from a mental health professional, and if it is determined that there is a foreseeable threat, a threat in the future, then they are able to sort of temporarily dispossess that individual of their firearms for up to a year.
Right. Right. And so, in your opinion, as somebody who understands this law and the facts in this case as they've been reported so far, and look, it's still fairly early. We don't have everything concrete yet, but
yeah,
which is often the case with these incidents, and they get all the attention at the very beginning, and then attention dies down, and then you get more facts come out later. But as we understand it right now, he should have been qualified for one of these yellow flag orders, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, the process seems like it could have been instigated, where the individual is taken into protective custody and then an assessment is made. There's just all kinds, as you mentioned, all kinds of reporting. There are reports that he had a prescription that he stopped taking. Now, if he was given a prescription, then you would assume that there's some sort of diagnosis. I haven't seen anything that would suggest there was a formal diagnosis, but all the reports seem to indicate a particular type of mental illness and psychosis that was present. Either way, with the threats that were collected by people around him, and then the reports of the mental health deterioration, it seems like this is a textbook example for the yellow flag law. Now, why wasn't he taken into protective custody? We know that there was attempt to locate him. They were given the wrong address. Police were given the wrong address, and then they found his house, and he wasn't there. Another time they went, and he wouldn't answer the door. And so we also know that there was an alert put out to sort of a missing persons, try to attempt to locate. And so it's unclear whether that is the reason that the yellow flag law wasn't put into effect, because they simply couldn't find him. They couldn't come into contact with him. But yeah, those are all factors that are in play here.
Yeah. And then there's also a report that, I mean, this was supposed to be a wellness check too. So I don't even know if it would have qualified for a red flag or yellow flag, whatever you want to call it, part of that proceeding or not. But and then of course there were reports that the police had spoken with his family, with his brother, and that the family had said they were going to take his guns.
Exactly.
Although there was also a report that the brother said he answers the door with a gun. So it's still a little bit jumbled, I think, in there as to exactly what happened, which is how these things usually go when you're dealing with reports from people months after the fact, usually.